Here are the secrets of successful non-tech startup founders, especially in SaaS businesses. Number one, the great CEOs that don't come from a technical background have very high self-awareness of their weaknesses. This is probably the number one most important skill a CEO has to have. You need to know what you suck at, right? And you need to be mindful that you suck at it, and you go find help to make sure you don't make a major mistake. So if you are not strong in technology, you need to appreciate that, have some humility around what that means, and find someone who can help you and ask good questions of them. Number two, when you are managing a technology team as a non-technical founder, you have to take the time to understand conceptually the technology design and architectural choices your team is making, right? You do not just let them go do it by themselves, right? You say, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what I want to be able to promise to customers. Propose an approach and give me the pros and cons of the various options we can use to approach this problem technically, right? Which technology platforms do we use? What kind of technical architectures are we going to use? If you don't understand those terms, that's okay. You don't have to initially. What you do have to do is ask those questions and have the right person explain them to you. Every technical decision has a trade-off. You don't need to understand code, but you do need to understand the trade-off that you are leading your company into, and you have to be aware of it. That's extremely important. Here's a quick example of a technology trade-off decision. When you architect a system, you can do it in a couple different ways, right? You can create a single code base that's called a monolithic code base, one big chunk of code to oversimplify, and that manages your application, right? And that is the most common way to build an application in the early days. As you get bigger, sometimes it makes more sense to take that one single code base and break it up into what's called a microservices architecture. And so what happens is, rather than having everything be in one code base, you start modularizing your system with these internal handoffs or internal APIs or microservices that allow you to call certain services. So for example, you might have a microservice to handle logins. So maybe you're a SaaS company with 9 different products down the road. And there's no point in having 9 different login systems. You have one that you can sort of call as a microservice, if you would, that initiates that login, as an example. And so there's a trade-off to something like this, right? It's a little bit technical, but oftentimes as the teams get bigger, it's helpful to have more of the product be more modularized, right? When the team's smaller, it's easier with just one code base. But it's harder to set up a code base into modules. There's all this extra work needed to do that. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? It depends. But you should be able to be involved in that decision because it's going to take cost. If you design the software to be meant to be convenient for a very large team when you're very small, it consumes a lot of your technical resources to do that. If you just build what's expedient today and build a single code base without any forethought as to how you're going to handle a larger team down the road, then by the time you really need that sort of more modularized system and that architecture, there's so much code that has to be rewritten, right? So those are some examples of trade-offs. Now, these trade-offs are going to be made with your technical experts, but you should be aware of the implication, particularly financially, around budget and how fast you can operate when. Certain decisions favor making life easy for you now by intentionally, whether you're aware of it or not, making life more difficult for you later. Other decisions make life a little bit more difficult today, maybe 10, 20% more difficult, but make your life a year or two later, 50, 60, 70% easier. Those kinds of decisions, do we want to suffer now for benefits later, or do we want to make life easy now but suffer later? That is a decision the founder has to be involved with and has to comprehend that that decision is being made either on their behalf or with their involvement. Every technology decision has a trade-off, and you damn well better understand what that trade-off is at a conceptual level. Third thing you need to do as a non-technical founder is you need to recognize when you are creating a technical debt situation through your business decisions. Let me explain what I mean by technical debt. Technical debt means you are creating a technical problem that has to be solved down the road, but you get some kind of benefit in the short run, right? The most common technical debt issue I see is we're trying to land a big deal or get a renewal from our biggest client, and there's like 1 or 2 or 3 features that's missing in the product, okay? And it's a mad scramble. They won't renew. We can't get the big deal unless these features are built in there. The non-technical CEO goes to the CTO and says, I need this feature. I need it yesterday. You got 30 days, get it done. I don't care how you do it, get it done. Time out. That example scenario, that is where technical problems are created, right? Because to get something done that fast means taking the shortest approach possible, typically, that's easiest today, but inadvertently, but very predictably creates a problem tomorrow. When you make a business decision that creates a future technical problem that will negatively impact sales and revenue, you need to be aware that that's what you've done. Extremely important to make decisions with full awareness of the consequences of your choices. This leads me to the fourth thing you need to understand as a non-technical founder and a CEO. When you are non-technical as a founder and as a CEO, it's not good enough to have a competent chief technology officer or head of engineering. You need one that's technically competent and is also a very skilled communicator that can communicate technical trade-offs to a business person with a non-technical background, okay? That is probably the most overlooked skill when it comes to hiring a CTO for a non-technical founder. You have to understand what the technology department is doing. You can't just abdicate to them and have the CTO take care of everything. You need a kind of CTO that can explain the implications of the decisions that they're doing, why they're doing it, and the trade-offs involved so that you understand them. Now, if you're a technical founder, you can hire a technical CTO and you kind of sort of nerd out, right? Sort of use shorthand, and that works perfectly fine. But if you are not technically oriented, you especially need to look for a CTO that can communicate. And I will tell you, 10, 15% of the CTOs out there are able to communicate to a non-technical audience. It's a very prized, a less common skill. It's definitely findable, but you have to know to go intentionally look out for that skill. Otherwise, you're going to be in a situation where between the two of you, you're going to create technical problems that negatively impact revenues and sales down the road and not realize it. And that's something you get to be extremely careful about as a non-technical founder. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please subscribe. You can get more videos just like this one. Any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll be sure to answer. On that note, keep on scaling and be aware of all these technical gotchas, especially when you are a non-technical founder.